Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to look at Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. This is what's often called the Road to Emmaus story. But before we get into the story, I need to set it up a little bit. Right before this, Jesus died, and his disciples were all distraught. They were torn apart about it. They didn't know how they were supposed to go on without him. Well, then the women come to the tomb, they hear the good news of the resurrection, and they rush back to tell the others, which is great, right? Well, the other disciples still don't really buy it. It kind of sounds too good to be true. In this scene, there are two disciples walking on the road from Jerusalem to Emmaus, and they're talking with each other about what's just happened. They're processing their feelings. They're talking about Jesus dying. They're talking about this strange story that the women told that he's raised. They don't know what to make of everything that's just happened. Right? This is just like people today talking about top headline stories or sharing about what's going on in their lives. They just need to talk about it. They just need to process it and think about it out loud. Well, as they're walking along this road, this stranger shows up and just starts walking along there with them. They don't know who this guy is, right? This other person walking along the road. And this other person overhears their conversation and kind of says, what are you guys talking about? Well, these two guys stop walking and kind of look at this stranger and say, are you the only one in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's happened? Have you been living under a rock the last couple of days? How do you not know what's happened to Jesus? Right? People would have been talking about this. So they tell him. They tell him what happened to Jesus. They even say this wonderful line, "We had hoped that he would bring salvation to Israel." That simple little phrase, "we had hoped," contains all their sadness and their sorrow. Right? They had put all of their hopes on Jesus. And what happened? He died. And all of their hopes seemed to die with him. Think about in your life. What are things that you say, I had hoped? I had wanted this thing to happen in my life. I was looking forward to this thing happening. But it never happened. Everything fell apart instead. That's where these guys are. They are in the midst of their grief and sorrow and their broken hopes and shattered dreams. They don't know how they're supposed to go on in life. Also, they don't know that this stranger on the road is the resurrected Christ. Which is interesting, right? They don't recognize him. How do they not recognize him? He's right there. Doesn't he look the same? Well, there's something about this situation that makes them not recognize him. Maybe it's their grief and their emotions. A lot of times when we are grieving, we're not thinking clearly. We can't see that Jesus is still right there with us. We think he's abandoned us. We think we're all alone, all of this stuff. But he's right there. And so what does he do for these two travelers? He explains scripture to them. He listens to them. He listens to their story. And then when they're done, he explains scripture. Kind of in a way to say, why are you surprised that the Messiah suffered and died? This is how it was going to play out. Did you not know this? Right? He had told them, Jesus had told them about his passion and his suffering and his death and his resurrection. It's not like this was something unexpected for them, but they were still sad about it. They were still grieving. So he explains scripture to them as they keep walking along the road. Eventually, they kind of get to this fork in the road, and Jesus pretends that he's going to go the other way. And they're like, no, stay with us, right? It's getting dark, it's getting late. Come and stay with us. So he does, right? They want to be with him now. He's not just a random stranger that they wonder, where have you been? Why don't you know what's going on? Instead, they've become closer to him and they want him to stay with them. They take him to their house and they have a meal with him. And in the meal, in the breaking of the bread, they recognize him. They remember Jesus in the breaking of the bread. Maybe they're thinking of the Last Supper. Maybe they're thinking of when he fed the multitudes with the bread and the fish. Something about that meal makes them recognize, oh, this is Jesus right here with us. But as soon as they recognize him, he vanishes. Right? He disappears from their sight. What do then? They run back to Jerusalem to tell the other disciples. This is an incredible story, right? One thing that's incredible about it is, first, the reminder that the resurrected Christ is always with us, even when we can't see him. Also, this story follows our liturgy. Think about the liturgy on Sunday morning, for Sunday morning worship. There's the gathering section when we're all brought together, when we come with all of our shattered hopes and our sorrows and our sadness. Then we hear scripture interpreted to us. Then we celebrate the meal, the body and blood of Christ. And then at the end, we are sent out. We leave this place to tell others about the resurrected Christ and how he meets us and how he meets others. This is a wonderful story because we see the change in these travelers. They go from sadness and sorrow to hope and joy because they were met by the resurrected Christ. It's the same way for us, and it's the same way for you. Jesus walks with you. He is always with you. And because of that, you can't help but tell others about him. There's your 5-minute Bible study for the day. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.